Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, I know this episode is airing at a normal time for you, but this is the earliest interview that we've ever done in Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast history, which says a lot about today's guest. Her name is Angie Besignano. She is an incredible person who, the more that I research about her business, her work, herself, when it came to preparing for today's interview, what I really found is someone who is deeply committed to helping others achieve as much as they can possibly achieve. So let me tell you a little bit about Angie. As a certified high performance coach, she's deeply committed to empowering individuals from diverse backgrounds to achieve their full potential. With extensive experience leading training sessions and speaking at events on a range of topics, including leadership, talent management, wellness, she's honed her unique ability to connect with people and motivate them to succeed. As a keen player and strategist, she's demonstrated the ability to manage teams to work in synchronization with corporate parameters and nurture them to achieve predetermined business goals. She does all of this while combining a really unique blend of personal awareness, self-awareness, personal development, business understanding, strategy, all that good stuff. So I'm not going to say anything else. I'm so excited. Let's dive straight into my interview with Angie Besignano. All right, Angie, I'm so excited. I don't even know where our conversation's going to go today, but welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Oh, thanks. I am so excited to actually be here. You're right. It is a little bit early. It's still dark out for me. So that's what's going on over here in the Southwest.
I love it. Hey, Angie, I am going to blame, though. Partially, it's because Arizona is not like the rest of us when it comes to daylight savings time.
We definitely are we're problems. Everybody says that, like, oh, you're in that time zone. I didn't know what that meant, but now I know what it means because we never change. We don't have any daylight savings or any of that. So yeah, it's problematic.
I hear you. Frankly, I do agree. I don't think any of us should be switching clocks all these times we do throughout the year. So it's all good. But Angie, I obviously teased listeners a little bit about your background and what it is that you do, but fill in those gaps for listeners. I know you've got your own incredible story of self-growth and getting to where you want to be, but tell listeners in your own words, who is Angie? How did you get here?
It's so funny because I always make a joke and say, how did I get here? And I say, I lip skated my way to where I am, meaning I tripped and I fell and I tripped and I fell and I tripped and I fell and I ended up where I am. I never set out to be anything like a coach or a trainer or any of those things. I just started at a really young age in management. And I found that I was jumping from job to job or place to place, company to company. And I always thought it was, well, the next best thing, right? The next shiny object. That's what's going to make me happy. And I would say somewhere around like my late 20s, I should say, 28, 29, I had some businesses that I had started and I really was unhappy. And it wasn't a money situation. It was just nothing ever felt like it spoke to me. It never felt like it was the right fit. And one day I literally woke up. I was working in sales, which was my whole entire background up to that point. And I was getting promotions, higher level positions. That was never an issue. And I literally woke up one day and said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what it's supposed to be. But I still didn't know what it was supposed to be. So I've made a career out of finding myself is kind of the joke. I've really wasted a lot of time, I thought, and now I look back and say, you know what? None of that was a waste because it brought me to where I am now. And so, how do you become a coach? And I remember I belonged to, this was kind of a funny moment. Back in 2001, I belonged to a pretty high profile networking group. And one of the gentlemen that was a member was a life coach. And when I tell you that he was like, and it's sad to say this, but he was like the laughing stock of the group. Like, oh, what do you do? Get on the phone and just tell people what to do all day? Well, I would say to you that he is still a life coach, and he has laughed himself all the way to the bank, and he's made tremendous strides in his business because he knew, right? He saw that. So I think that was my first real introduction to that life coaching world and what it all is. So it started out as life coaching and kind of morphed into being more of a trainer and kind of getting to the human element of all levels of business, all levels of people, and kind of, working from the inside out.
Yeah, I love that overview, Angie. And I almost knew that that's where it was going to go from there, is the human element. Because when I think about the body of your work, it's so often, heck, it always comes back to that human element. And I hear it in your own story of that when you talk about your own career path before venturing out on your own and becoming an entrepreneur, is that you were getting promotions, you were working in corporate jobs, you were in managerial positions, even at a young age. But what was missing amidst the money, amidst the career, was the human element, that happiness. And I'm very curious, take us back to there when you started that journey of self-exploration. What answers were you coming up with? What questions were you coming up with when you were searching for that happiness? Because it's such a tough question to ask.
It's so funny because I think I put it on myself for all those years, like almost kind of, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy? And so there was another moment, right? There was another moment that happened. I definitely found myself very happy when I was in front of a room training people. And if people came up to me after and said, hey, I really loved what you said about X, Y, and Z. Could you help me a little bit with that? And I was, yeah, sure, I can help you with that. So I was coaching before I knew I was coaching. I didn't know, before it was even a thing or the thing. And so fast forward, I was at a seminar. It was actually a real estate seminar. And this woman was hired in, and she was our keynote. And it wasn't a huge event. There was probably, a couple of hundred of us. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot, but, considering the size of the real estate world, it was only a few hundred of us. And she got up and she did this hour-long keynote on behavior. And I was sitting next to my then boss, and I looked at her and I kind of nudged her with my arm, and I was like, I love her. I love what she's doing. And she looked at me and she goes, I know. What are you waiting for? Like, really? And I said, yeah, like, I would love to do that. Like, it was mesmerizing. And she goes, well, do you know what we're paying her? Do you have any idea what we're paying her? And I said, no, I have no idea. She goes, $15,000. I go, what? So it wasn't even about the money. I just had no idea that you could do that and make that. I mean, I had been to, Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within in like 2002, and this was probably 2006. And I just never made that connection. And now all of a sudden I was like, you could make it wasn't just the amount of money she was getting paid per hour. It was really like, oh, I could make a living getting up in front of people and delivering something powerful. And then really in my heart, working with them and helping them to grow one-on-one. So there was like that connection. It didn't really happen. And I started my speaking career around 2008.
Yeah, I love that, Angie. There's so many aspects of that I want to dive into. It's hard to pick one individual point to jump off of from there, but one thing that I'm hearing that I know is going to deeply resonate with Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur listeners is it's that point that you made about the fact that I didn't even know this was an option, because I feel like in life, especially growing literally from childhood, we are taught that there are these paths, go to high school, go to college, get a degree, do your certifications in whatever it is that you want to go into, and get a job. And then fast forward, the next thing we're told is 401k, blah, 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 65 years old, you retire. Those are the traditional paths. And I feel like, it's a simple case of you don't know what you don't know. And for you, you're fortunate that you were sitting in a room saying, wait, that is something that appeals to me. Like, why am I sitting here instead of being up there? For people who haven't had that awakening yet, or maybe, I think this is a key part of your story, Angie, maybe they don't realize that they've had that awakening yet. They're not tuned into it. What is even the process? What's step one of even trying to figure this stuff out?
So this is, again, I guess this is part of the journey, and you're very good about having this conversation with me. I think you've done this before, Brian. But so my business has morphed into, like, even though I've done, and I still do, the leadership training, talent and development. I even, it can go as far as sales. I have, certifications falling out of my pockets, degrees. But my focus now with people is to, and I call myself like the truth-seeking coach. Find your truth, live your truth, or accept your truth, and then you can live in your truth. And I think that a lot of people come to coaches or even therapy, honestly, because they can't figure out why they're not happy. And just by strictly coincidence, most of my clients have become middle-age-ish people. And as I'm going through the process, and here's to answer your question specifically, you have to find the clarity piece, right? You have to give people the space to be really honest. I have people say things to me that they would never say out loud to anybody else. Their spouses of 40 years or 30 years, their bestest friends, because obviously, coaching is a safe place. We don't divulge anything. But that's a space where you can really get people to open up and become vulnerable with themselves and say, hey, if nobody was listening or watching, what would I really want to do? What did I really want to be? So a lot of these people that were coming to me were kind of in like midlife, what they called midlife crisis. And I say, no, it's not midlife crisis. It's kind of like a midlife enlightenment. So, I put those two things together and said, maybe I should start going even into a younger demographic, get my hands on them so that they learn how to find and live their truth rather than living by all the externals that they feel like they are supposed to. And I'm air quoting here, I'm supposed to go to college. I'm supposed to get married. My family, everybody's a doctor. I should be a doctor. If I'm not a doctor, I'm letting them down. And people live these false lives and they go through the motions. They raise children or they chase the next promotion. And I was one of those people. I was, what's the next thing? Because I wasn't, again, fulfilled. I wasn't joyful. I wasn't happy. And it really was about like what I really wanted to do. And I teach people like, hey, if your truth is that you're going to be happy, living on some beautiful island, cracking coconuts and braiding hair, and you can sustain yourself. Yeah, obviously you're not going to leave 3 or 4 kids at home at this point, but to that point, what will make you happy from this point forward? So it's really about finding some clarity and getting people to become more vulnerable with themselves instead of pushing away the truth, because that's what we do. We push away the truth because there's something that we're afraid of, whether it's losing our job or, losing a spouse or letting people down around us. 99.9% of the time, I would say that's what I've seen happen. And that's why I, have an abundance of clients in that middle age group going, I don't know, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. This doesn't feel like it. Like, what do you mean? You're a CEO, right? You're a high level individual, and they're not happy, right? It's not just about the grind of the job. It's because they've never found their truth. So when I say truth seeker, I am that person, definitely.
Yeah, Angie, that is such an incredible answer. And it's a natural segue into where I really want to go with you. Listeners know that we always ask guests, what is your superpower? And Angie, I particularly, as someone who loves words, and I know how intentional you are as well when it comes to the way you use words with your clients and your work, I loved your answer here because you told me that my superpower is being able to connect with and tune in to individuals very quickly. I want to talk about that tuning in. I'm a very visual person. I picture it as you're sitting in front of someone, and you're just tuning that radio dial until you find that right frequency, and you're like, boom, There it is. That's the thing. Talk to us about that ability, because it doesn't come naturally to all of us, and not everybody can do it for themselves, which is obviously why it's powerful to have a coach. You can't read the label from inside the jar, but talk to us more about that deep level of tuning in and what it brings out, and how the heck do you get there?
I think a big piece of it is, you have to build that rapport quickly. And people have asked me that. And I feel like for me, it is natural. So it took me a minute to figure out, well, I don't know. Why do I have this thing? It is my superpower. I call it Angie dust. I sprinkle Angie dust. And I think it's because I come from a place of being able to see things or hear things even that people aren't saying to me. So they might give me, I might ask them a question and say, so why are you here today? And I let them talk. I let them ramble for 5 to 7 minutes. And I get so much from that. And then I relate to them as a human being, right? I'm a coach. I'm well trained. I know how to guide. I know how to help find the answers. But if I'm not connected to that person, they're never going to trust me. So I'm able to foster trust very quickly because I relate to them as a human being. And I don't just go, okay, well, let's get to it. Let's talk about what you just said to me. There's a way to handle people. And I think that especially in my coaching sessions, or even my group sessions, I just have this way of being very relatable to people, great at what I do, but I'm still human. And I don't project myself as though I'm above anybody. That's a big piece of it. I've had coaches. I've had coaches that I've worked with personally that were my coach. And, so many of them are like, well, this is what you need to do. I do not do that. I am not a consultant who says, okay, and I've done business consulting, right? You want to build your business? Let's do this. Sure. But in terms of coaching, I dive deep and deeper and deeper and deeper until I hit, until I guess I hit oil, I strike oil. But I do it in a way that is very human, not soft. I mean, I am, I've worked for a few coaching companies over the years, and if they had tough clients that were like, chewing up and spitting out other coaches, they were sent to me. Like, Angie, we need you to take care of this. So I am really tough, but I'm very loving. I'm very compassionate, and I look to understand, and I set the tone and say, hey, you're obviously here for a reason, right? What's going on, right? And it's just all about energy and what you project to people. But yeah, I think it's because I don't tell people what to do. I'm not your mama. That's what I tell them. I'm not your mama, so don't ask. Let's find your answer, not the answer that I think, you should be doing. That's not coaching.
Yeah, I can definitely see that tough love side of you, Angie, and I do agree. Maybe I'm biased because I'm an Italian from Boston, that I can totally see that working. I think of Good Will Hunting. I think of that scene with Robin Williams and Matt Damon where he's just like, all right, kid, if you want to jerk around, we can, but you're here for a reason. Let's get to the root of it. So I absolutely love that approach. I want to talk to you about that because you talked about the Angie dust that you sprinkle on your clients, but I also want to talk about the tools that are in your arsenal, because as someone who researched your work before today's session, I see so many interesting facets of your work, from the actual strategic stuff that you help clients work on, but also that really self-reflective stuff. Like, you even incorporate DISC assessments into the way that you work with people. Talk to us about those different types of tools and how we can utilize them, whether with a coach or on our own. What are the different approaches to start getting these answers?
So I did the DISC. I became certified with DISC. I mean, there's so many behavioral assessments out there now, or not that they're new necessarily, but they're being used so much more because we're trying to understand, right, the human element. I keep saying that, but that's really the basis of all of it. And I don't know, I was probably 21 or 22 when I was interviewing at a job, and they said, hey, we're going to, have you do this test. It's not a pass or fail. It's just, we want to kind of know if you're a good fit for this particular position. And I was like, okay. And, do you have the time? Sure. So I did it. And they, got the response very quickly, and they sat down with me. And I remember the owner of the company, it was a small company, and he was like, well, this is you. This is what this test said you are. And I remember going, like, eyes wide open, mouth dropping, going, how did you know? What is this, like, wizardry that you're like, what is this? So I was like mesmerized by that. Again, something I didn't know that existed. And I think that's even too why I'm able to dial in, because I did become certified in DISC after that. And I've worked for several other companies that utilize DISC or another, again, behavioral assessment to kind of dial into, are we putting the right people in the right places? Because we all have very natural abilities. So, for example, I always say to people, like, if the plane goes down, heaven forbid, you want me on that plane, right? Because I am a roll up your sleeve kind of a person. I'm going to take charge. I'm going to lead. We will be eating. We will be drinking. We'll be fine, right? I'm not the person that's going to be screaming, crying in the corner, waiting for somebody to lead them. So knowing that about myself and knowing what my natural styles are is very important, because I have to kind of hone that in. I have to harness my energy. And really, I had to learn how to meet people where they are instead of, not only am I Italian, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but I'm typical. You're seeing me here, my hands are all over the place. I'm always kind of, the inflection in my voice. I'm from the Northeast as well. I'm originally from New York and raised in New Jersey. So that's another piece that I've had to learn to kind of, harness a little bit, because I have this energy that's overpowering sometimes. And that's not what you want to do as a coach. So, I know I'm kind of digressing here a little bit, but that's really part of the whole big picture for me, is to be able to understand people and learn some of, like, it's not all intuition, right? It's an ability to apply certain things. So I became a certified high performance coach. Love that. There's a whole process there that really, and there's 50 some odd sessions that I can go through with clients. And they start at at the foundation, right, of the person in gaining clarity and working through all the elements that make us human before our roles, right? So that we're not looking to just coach somebody because of the role that they're in, right? We start coaching them, or I start coaching them as a human being first, and then work into, whatever challenges may come along.
Yeah, Angie, I'll tell you what, you're making my job so easy here today, because you're leading me right to where I want to go with you, which is, it's that last piece that you brought up, which is coaching someone based on the human that they are. And Angie, I'm going to say this in no uncertain terms in front of listeners here today, is that the thing that I really love about your work is that you do recognize that big picture and the cross-pollination. When you talk about high performance in your career, you can't help but go to the human element. What does the human element include? It includes your life, your relationships, what's going on inside of your head. And that's the thing. It's not sexy for us on an entrepreneurship podcast to talk about relationships could be messing you up. Your relationship with yourself in your own head could be messing you up. All of that is trickling into, leaking into, pollinating into your career, whether it's your job, your business, whatever it may be. Angie, that's what I love about your coaching, is that you actually are a rare coach that incorporates this stuff into it. Talk to us. Don't hold back on us. Talk to us about the importance of that bigger picture of life, that if you're looking for high performance in business, you have to look at these other things as well.
Absolutely. I've had many high-level executive people come into coaching with me and approach it like, I've really got this part dialed in. I really want to focus on my business. I'm good. I get up, I work out every day, I eat well, I have, the picket fence, I have a great life, I take vacations. And the minute somebody tells me how good they are at something, I know that's a space for me to dive into, because they're avoiding it. They don't want to go there. So I let them tell me the story and say, okay, so, right, what are you most clear about? What are you, where do you feel like you need a little more clarity? And I'm going to be honest, eventually it always comes back to Well, when I was 20, right, there's a story, there's a belief, there's something. And even if they feel like they're operating at level, 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, um, I ask them, like, so is this the best that you're ever going to be? Even if you are, even if what you're telling me is true, that everything is great. Is it? Is this it? Did you reach the ceiling? Did you reach the limit? And then they go, oh, I don't know. Well, what else could there be? What could be next level for you? And that's not something they really think about. They think maybe about the next promotion that's going to yield an extra $50,000 a year or something. But usually it's not that. It's like, well, I've arrived and I'm fine. And they're not. I actually had a client probably about 10 years ago. He was in sales. He was a very, very, very successful person in sales. He probably was doing about 50 million a year gross and was stuck. 50 million one year, 50 million the next year, 50 million the next year, and was like, I don't get it. And we started coaching, and it took a minute because he was tough. He had all the answers. He combated. He was like, I don't really see what this is going to do. And then boom, all of a sudden one day it came out like there was an affair. There was something going on in his personal life that was happening. And I thought, and I said to this person, like, so do you think that might be affecting you mentally, like your energy, emotionally, maybe spiritually? P.S. We worked into that, and all of a sudden it was $5 million more and $10 million more. Like he had some things that he was internalizing and thought he was working through, but was not even near. He wasn't even on the same hemisphere. And it was really all about it was his personal being, his stuckedness, as I call it. And that happens a lot. It doesn't always happen to that degree, but there's usually something that holds us back personally and prevents us from being, better at.
Woof. Listeners, Angie is laying down a huge obstacle and challenge for us to overcome this week, this month, this year, whatever it may be in your own business growth, your own life journey. We need to identify those things that are holding us back. And I love the fact that you're illustrating these with real stories for us, Angie, because you're right. It's easy to go through life. It's easy to go through business and say, oh, right now, let's say marketing is my problem or sales is my problem. But the problem might be something 3 steps before that looks completely unrelated, but it's something that we have to address to tangibly move forward. So I love your illustrations and love all the stories that come with it. As we come towards the end, I don't want to let you go just yet because there's one word that I saw in so many aspects of your story on your website that I read about, as well as today you've shared it with us about this term chasing. You spent so many years chasing things, and I know that you use that word very intentionally. I'd love to hear from your own perspective. What's the alternative to chasing? What's the best way to go about things rather than chasing? Because I know, having talked to as many listeners of the show as I have, that a lot of entrepreneurs, they have that feeling of chasing. Angie, walk us away from that feeling of chasing. Where should we go instead?
Intentional. I think that if I look back and look at my personal path and say, why was I chasing? Well, because I wasn't paying attention to that moment, right? To what it was that I liked or loved about my life versus where was I really honestly not really feeling it. I didn't do that. I assumed that it was, stature related or financial, right? Money. And and then I turned it around on myself. And said, oh, it must be me. Because I was then getting promotions, making the money, like I said earlier. So I think that if I look back now and I said to former self, what would you do differently? It would say, I would have said to myself in my early 20s, probably, well, what do you love about your life, both personally and professionally? And what do you not like so much about your life, personally and professionally? Nobody's listening. Write it down on a piece of paper. It's yours. Burn it when you're done, but confess that to somebody. right? Even if it's not a coach or a therapist, or a friend, do with yourself and really allow yourself to be honest. Would you be driving that car if it didn't say something about you, right? What are you striving toward? And honestly, too, what are you afraid of? People that are strong-willed and minded, they don't look at being stuck as a fear. And I will tell you that if you're stuck and you can't get out of it, there's something. And actually, I'm going to make you laugh, Brian. I call that dirty diaper syndrome. Would you want to sit in a dirty diaper? Absolutely not. So then why do we allow ourselves to stay stuck someplace when we're not happy? Because honestly, it feels the same. Being in dirty, like, ooh, ugh, who wants to do that? So I kind of make people laugh and say, hey, how many of you, as an adult, have sat in a dirty diaper? And they're like, ew, no, I would never do that. And I'm like, how many of you are thrilled and excited and feel like your life is exactly where you want it to be? You're doing everything you've ever wanted to do, and not one hand goes up. And I'm like, well, then you're sitting in a dirty diaper somewhere in your life, and I know that. So yeah, it's kind of like a gross way of of giving the visual there, but it's to become intentional and allow yourself to be honest with yourself. Allow yourself to say, you know what, let me acknowledge what's really happening here. And I don't know if I would have gotten to my answer as quick, more quickly for sure, because it's hindsight. But I'm going to venture to guess that things would have maybe happened quicker for me, and that I wouldn't have been almost, 40 something years old. I'm not talking about my age here, but when I started to speak in front of people and motivate people and do those things. So yeah, I think the honesty with self is the key component.
And Angie, I'm going to say this. Listeners have had to listen to me say this all year here in 2023, but that answer it resonates so deeply with me because I've got 2 words for this year, and those 2 words are intention and discipline. And you just hit right on that intentionality component. The other things that I'm really hearing there is that awareness. I think that so much of what you call out in your own story, as well as for sure when you talk about the work that you do with clients, is it all starts with that awareness as well. We can't be intentional until we start becoming aware. And I love the illustration of the dirty diapers. It's for sure the first time we've said dirty diapers in the show's history. But I love it because you're right. If we are not where we want to be, we need to identify those dirty diapers because they are there, and we need to clean them up because we're not going to get anywhere wearing those dirty diapers. Well, Angie, typically I ask guests at the end of these episodes for their best piece of advice or their number one action that they want to see listeners take. I feel like you just gave us really actionable ones when it comes to sitting down and writing down those intentions and those awareness aspects of ourselves that we want to go deeper into exploring and growing on. But so since you just gave that advice, I'm still going to throw it your way because I feel like you always have amazing advice that can really challenge us to grow. So Angie, if there's any parting words that you want to leave us or lasting advice or an action that you think listeners should take, drop it on us right here.
Sure. So I think the thing that I would say is when you want to begin a process of getting to know yourself, to really get to know yourself, ask yourself who you are outside of your roles, your daily roles, whether you're a professional or you're a stay-at-home parent but who are you if you're not a mother, sister, brother, uncle, right? Teacher, professor, coach, right? Podcast, amazing man. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're not those things, who are you? And I think people run away from that because we rely so much on our roles to define who we are. And that's why it's easy to get stuck because we just keep doing the roles and we don't think about who we really are at our core. My chasing was because who I am is a human development professional. And that's what I should have been doing. I should never have been a manager, although I learned a lot, right? Should never have really been a trainer, but I learned a lot. But what I do is really connect with people. So it took me a long time. I lip skidded my way, but I'm here. So.
Woof, Angie, that is a heck of a question to leave us with at the end of today's episode. It gave me chills. Probably one of my favorite questions in this podcast history. Who are you outside of the roles and the labels that you fulfill? I absolutely love that. Gives us so much food for thought, Angie. That is an incredible, I'm honestly so excited for listeners to really simmer and stew inside of that. So I know that listeners are going to be eager to learn more about you, the awesome work that you do, to check out your website. I feel like I've teased your website a few times in today's episode. So Angie, drop all those links on us. Tell us where listeners should go from here.
Oh, angiespeaks.com. It's the easiest thing. My brand is Angie Speaks. So angiespeaks.com. Everything is there. My story is there. There are some wonderful pictures of me, a little bit about me, what I do, but mostly about what I offer. So yeah, it's all there. angiespeaks.com. Best place to find me.
Listeners, you all know the drill. Wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, we are dropping the link to Angie's website down below. It's angiespeaks.com. Super easy to remember. I always love those verb-related domain names. So kudos to you, Angie. angiespeaks.com. Definitely go check that out. We're also linking to Angie's personal LinkedIn. If you want to send her a message, say thanks for coming on the show, you want to connect with her and keep in tune with all the awesome stuff that she's doing, you can definitely check her out there. Otherwise, thank you so much, Angie, for joining us here today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you. It was so much fun.